I spoke last night to the Army vet, the Federal Labor member for Solomon, Luke Gosling, about the Port of Darwin. You might recall I indicated to him I'd like to talk to him about the terms of reference for the Royal Commission into Veteran Suicide and other matters. We don't know the other matters until we see the terms of reference. What veterans are explicitly telling me is that the Department of Defence, the Department of Veterans Affairs and the Defence Force hierarchy should have no part in determining the terms of reference. Well, enter one Justin Huggett. He grew up in country New South Wales, Forbes. He was a shearer. After he left school, his grandfather was a rat of Tobruk. He's a former infantry platoon sergeant, 12 years with the 2nd Battalion based in Townsville, 2 tours of Afghanistan, 2 of East Timor, 1 tour of the Solomon Islands. The Hassett Award winner in 2007 for the most outstanding junior leader in the Royal Australian Regiment, a recipient of the Medal of Gallantry from Afghanistan in 2007. He's a veteran's mental and welfare advocate. He wrote recently, quote, "If you spend a long enough time as an enlisted soldier, you start picking up common themes which are shared within the enlisted ranks. One of the most common is the notion that the higher the rank an officer achieves, the further they lurch away from being a soldier, and the closer they come to being a hoop-jumping wannabe politician," unquote. Splendid writing. It's a pleasure to welcome Justin Huggett to the program. Justin, thank you for joining me. And this is what all vets are saying to me, the transition from soldier to suit. What happens, Justin?
Oh, that's a good question, Alan. Thanks for having me on. I've been very lucky in my career at the beginning. I was really fortunate. I had a really good crop of young platoon commanders come out of RMC that were, they were really willing to listen, and they were willing to take the advice of the more sort of experienced junior and senior NCOs around them. So I was lucky in that state. But after that, I'm not sure what happens. I don't know whether they lose eyes on the prize or whether their priorities become different. I'm not sure. But as I said, I've been lucky, and I even said at the end of that opinion piece that I wrote that I genuinely hope for the future enlisted men, especially in the Army and in the infantry, that those really good young officers that I had the pleasure of serving under and working for, I hope they hang around, because they're going to be the ones that need to correct the direction that the military is going in. And we can probably look all the way back. As I said, we can look all the way back. That was done at the damage with David Morrison, and the way he lurched the army.
We'll come to him in a minute. I tell you what, to interrupt you there, this man can write. Are you listening, Angus Campbell and the Starched Shirt Brigade? This is Justin Huggett, and he wrote this, quote, "By the time you're high enough up that chain of command, your uniform is just a costume, and you are impersonating a soldier." You just mentioned...
That's 100% what they're doing.
Yeah. And you just mentioned that David Morrison. Now, he was the Chief of Army. He was the first bloke, wasn't he, to declare troops guilty before any proof was presented. And you wrote...
I was very fortunate, Alan, that I'm not going to mention his name. I don't have his permission. I've spoke to him personally a couple of times. He was a very high-ranking officer that was involved in that Jedi Council, and he had unequivocal proof that he was not involved in it.
Yeah.
And he was thrown to the wolves by David Morrison just to be a scalp so that he could go on YouTube and make his big, standards you walk past, speech. And
that's Brereton. That's Brereton.
Yeah.
Justin, that's
exactly.
You said this kind of morale-sapping political correctness from military men has potentially damaged the army to the point it may never recover. Put simply, Justin, how bad is it?
I've been out a while now, but I still have a lot to do with a lot of my mates that are still in, and I'm fairly well tied into the veteran community up here. And we have a great deal of sympathy for the young enlisted men and women of the Air Force, the Army and the Navy. My mentality and the way that I was as a young digger, a junior NCO, and in the end as a sergeant, I wouldn't last 5 minutes in the Army now. I'd be that old salt that would be pushed out to the side, because I don't operate the way that this new fandangled army works. And the big thing that I try to tell people is that you've got two options when it comes to your military. You can have a military that is a direct reflection of your society, or you can have a military that fights and wins. You cannot have both. You have to make a decision on what you want to do with your military. Your military is a spear, and what we're doing at the moment is we're rounding that sharp spear off. And No, it's very hard to jam it in the chest of your enemies when it's blunt.
Unbelievable.
And,
What do you make then of this Defence Force Chief Angus Campbell wanting to strip all meritorious unit citations from about 3,000 Special Forces soldiers who served in Afghanistan, and these alleged crimes uncovered by Brereton? Political correctness gone mad, isn't it?
Once again, there's no proof. We've got allegations. No one's been in court yet. And I can tell you right now, I've had the great pleasure of speaking to a few of the Special Forces operators over the last 3 days. They've reached out to me, and this report has done some significant damage to the mental health of a few of these guys. And I've made sure I got permission to mention this before I come on here off them. So if this goes ahead and, people are found not guilty, then you've thrown these guys to the wolves again, off the back of what, some hack journalism on some other TV channels and the eyewitness accounts of some Afghani locals. Afghani locals writing eyewitness accounts against Australian soldiers and Australian Special Forces operators. Well, there's another word for them, and that's Taliban sympathisers. So, let's put it into perspective here, who your witnesses are to these crimes. So I'm the type of person that, right or wrong, I will always stand by my soldiers, and I didn't have the most golden, polished, shiny knight in shining armour career. I got in my fair share of trouble, but there would have been no soldier under my command that ever questioned where my loyalty lied to them. My loyalty lied with them and their families before everything else. So it'd be nice to see the hierarchy and the chain of command show the same loyalty to the engine room of the Defence Force, and it's just not happening.
Brilliant. Brilliant. We've got to go, but I mean, your words, you were hoping that people like Peter Dutton, who's breathed some hope into those who are serving and those who have served, by simply saying to our men, you're our country's defenders, you're trained to kill our enemies, and we have your back. Government don't seem to understand that. Justin, it's magnificent to talk to you, and it won't be the last time. Keep at it.
I'm not, Alan. Thanks for having me again. I appreciate it.
Not at all, my friend. We need people like you to speak out. Absolutely outstanding. There he is, Justin Huggett. Those people are coming out of the woodwork, I've got to tell you, because something has to give. The people at the top, and Peter Dutton, I hope, will deal with all of this. He has that determination to put Angus Campbell in his place, and he binned the decision to strip our soldiers of their citations and medals. But you've got to ask yourself, how does it get this far? How do officers end up in positions where they make these hopelessly inept and morale-evaporating decisions? Tell me what you think. Alan at skynews.com.au, 0414 000 848.